growth remains paramount, because if we do not grow the economy, then, and we have a shrinking pie, I think things will be much more difficult for Singapore, and Singaporeans will have fewer resources, less resources to redistribute, and there will be a lot more societal divisions fighting over a shrinking pie. But at the same time, we have never pursued a strategy of growth for growth's sake or growth at all costs. That has never been how we've done it in Singapore. We've always looked at growth as a means of advancing the well-being of everyone in Singapore. And the key is well-being and everyone. So it's not just for a select few, but we want to make sure that every citizen benefits from the nation's progress.
I think there's something for everyone, I would say, in this budget. And having this distribution for the social cause is equally important as we grow the business. So, in short, I may say that the budget is pro-business, pro-worker, as well as pro-family, and in all pro-Singapore.
Inflation is a real problem, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon. So those measures to help inflation, right, for people to cope with inflation and for businesses to cope with inflation, right, would be very welcome. But at the same time, I don't think that the budget has neglected on expanding the economy. We did see measures that come in, right, to promote innovation, for example, the enterprise scheme. So I think there is both sides that is covered in the budget. Perhaps one area that some of my peers and myself, right, were looking for a bit more was on the sustainability issues that was more prominent in the previous budget, but less so in this.
I've also tried to explain to people that one cannot just look at the budget statement in isolation. It's impossible for the budget statement every year to be all-encompassing. You've got to select your priorities, and you've got to try, of course, to be as inclusive as possible, but you've got to select a few areas to highlight. And the one reason why we didn't specifically highlight sustainability measures this year, in this year's budget statement, was precisely because we just covered it at great detail in last year's statement, and many of these measures are still work in progress. But we will obviously give an update in due course. Suddenly, something changed in the last 3 years because of COVID. What has changed? Really, at the root of it, it's a supply issue. COVID brought about disruptions to the completion of projects, both in the public and the private sector. So supply was impacted. Now, in the past, when we have a crisis, supply gets impacted, demand also comes down. This time around, demand didn't come down. Demand stayed very strong. For several reasons, we think. Number one, on the public market side, when supply got impacted, BTO queues got longer, and I think many Singaporeans got anxious. I mean, the psychology is, if I have to wait 6 years instead of 4 years for my BTO flat, I better join the queue now, I better apply earlier. So more came forward, and then those who couldn't get their flats on time decided to go to the resale market, and that pushed up prices on the resale market. Where the private property market is concerned, there were several things we saw. I think there were changing norms because people wanted to have more space in their flats. More people, especially younger Singaporeans, wanted to live on their own. So that pushed up demand as well. And because of the delay in completion, there were more Singaporeans also looking for rental, so pushed up rental demand. And because Singapore has also done well in the last 3 years of the COVID-19. So you've got non-residents coming here, some coming back, some coming here for the first time, also seeking rental, and that also pushed up demand. So you have a very, very exceptional and unusual circumstance where supply was impacted, but demand remained strong, and that's why you have the imbalance that we have today. How do we deal with it? I think we just have to get to the roots of the problem, which is the supply issue, and make sure that we increase supply in the housing market, which is happening. So this year alone, we will have 40,000 new completions for both private and public housing. And that's the highest in about 5 years. So considerable supply coming on stream. for this from 2023 to 2025, we will have about 100,000 new completions, new property completions for both the private and the public markets. So I think if we continue to ramp up supply, and at the same time we have been moderating demand with 2 rounds of cooling measures. So when you combine the steps that we are taking on both the supply and the demand side, I'm confident we will be able to bring stability back to the market again. Our unemployment rates are back to pre-COVID levels. Our employment rates are also back where they used to be. We are literally at almost full employment situation.
Right.
And yet there are vacancies available. It's not a bad problem to have.
It's a good problem.
That there are more opportunities. But what we must expect, therefore, that we can't protect every job. There will always be a process of churn in the economy. Businesses that are not so viable, that whose prospects are not so good, the jobs may become obsolete over time. But then what you need to do is to help the worker transit to a higher value job. And that higher value job could be within the same industry, it could be in another industry, it could be by the same company, but it may more often than not likely to be by a different company. And that transition is what training is all about. It's not easy to do, and that's what we are trying very hard to do. So the high number of vacancies alone can be a little misleading in that sense, because not all vacancy is the same.
Right.
We are focusing on the higher value jobs, and we are trying to help workers move from where they are, jobs which may be lower in value, to jobs which are higher value, and the worker in the process gets better pay, gets a better career prospects.
Right.
We've been trying to do this for some time. I think it's been showing results, and the job skills integrator is just yet another step in the process. The issue is really trying to help workers identify where might be the next better opportunity, where might be a better fit, and then to also focus on helping workers who might become displaced or retrenched. It's not always optimal for the displaced and retrenched worker to immediately find the first job that becomes available to him or her. They may want to do that because they have bills to pay and they really need to get the finances in order. But frankly, from a system point of view, it may not be the most optimal outcome. We want to make sure that the worker gets time to identify what their abilities and strengths are and get matched to an opportunity which will be better suited for that person.
So when we talk about unemployment support, right? It is really not to demotivate or disincentivize workers from looking for a job. What it means is to have a short period of support for them, to turn them around. The caveat is this. They must be showing activeness in applying for job. So that they must do. It is not a qualifier that anyone who loses a job gets unemployment support. So the effort must be there, they apply for job, and better still with the job skills integrator, how can we ensure the training leads to a job placement and that they can stand on their own feet.
That takes time. And then how do you support that worker during that period of training and job search and job placement? Now that's what we are thinking about in terms of perhaps there is room for the government to step in to provide some support during that transition period. And that's why I said in the budget debate that the way we envisage a support system like this is that it's more akin to a re-employment support rather than unemployment support, because that's really our intent. How do we keep on growing given how the high level that we are, it is true that our labor force growth will have to slow down because we just have natural limits. We will continue to stay open. We will top up with foreign workers, particularly at the top end as far as possible, but there are also limits to that. And so labor force growth will eventually slow down, bound to happen. But that means that we have to focus on productivity and innovation to ensure that Singapore continues to move forward. It's not a gamble. This is an imperative. This is an economic imperative. All advanced economies at this level have to push on innovation and productivity to move forward. And we are in this stage of development as well now, where we really have to work harder on productivity and innovation. How do we achieve it? There are perhaps broadly three strategies. One, industry by industry. Looking at industry transformation, the government provides support, like what we have done in this budget through the Enterprise Innovation Scheme. And this is delivering results. I mean, you can see industry by industry transforming, restructuring. As Alvin says, the exportable industries, the manufacturing, exportable services industries, easier to do. Domestic services harder, but still some promising outcomes are being seen, even in construction, F&B, and retail. And so we will continue to push this first strategy. But the second strategy is something that we also work on, which is to continue to attract high-quality investments, new projects that are at the frontier of technology, right? So it's not just organic productivity improvement, it's bringing in new activities from MNCs, cutting-edge stuff that will help push our technology frontier. And I mean, that's something we should recognize, really can give us an extra boost to our economy in terms of innovation and productivity. And that's why we have topped up the National Productivity Fund by $4 billion in this budget, precisely to be able to promote and bring in and attract more high-quality investments that will really significantly boost our capabilities. Right. And the third aspect of it is really our workers. Because you have firms, you have investments, but we also need our workers to continually reskill and upskill themselves. And that's the whole skills future ecosystem that we are working on.
The government has always been very fiscally prudent, and as long as the political structure does not change much, this fiscal prudence position, right, won't change. So that part, I think we are quite assured of. The spending part, when it is on the trend increase, right, is inevitable in an aging society, whereby it's the social cost that is going up. And I think the other part of the cost, I would believe that has a meaningful impact that on trend increase would be on defense because of the geopolitical environment that we see. So those two components would be increasing as long as we have this environment.
Discipline starts with spending. We do expect government expenditures to go up, but we have to be disciplined about the increase and make sure that we don't end up just with a very bloated public service or public expenditure. But whatever we do, make sure that there is good value for money. But if indeed public expenditure rises for good reasons, additional spending that we need to take care of the seniors, to support the vulnerable segments of society, then obviously we will have to look at additional revenues to make sure that we maintain a fiscally sustainable system. And that's what we will continue to do in MOF, looking at different sources, different options in order to keep the budget in balance. But in all of these options, we will always make sure that the fiscal system remains one that is fair and progressive. Some people say it is like Robin Hood. We are taking from the rich to help the poor. But it's really not quite the right description of our philosophy. This Robin Hood idea is not quite an accurate description of our philosophy. Because our philosophy is that we want everyone to do their part in nation building. Rich or poor, everyone contributes. That's why, for example, there is GST, there are broad-based taxes. Everyone contributes something to nation building. But those who are more well off will contribute more. Those who are Greater means will contribute more in taxes. At the same time, everyone benefits from government spending. Even the rich will benefit from some government spending. The well-being of the broad middle, I think, is very vital in holding our social compact together. And over the decades, we have seen real income growth in the middle, in the broad middle, in our median workers, median households. Real income growth has been higher than what it has been in many other advanced economies. The income levels is also higher, in fact, than many other comparable advanced economies. And that's how we've been able to progress as a society, where broad middle sees continued improvements in their life, but at the same time, we pay attention to uplifting the lower income groups and creating a more equal society. That has been our journey so far, and we will do everything we can to continue delivering on this in the coming years.